Today we're going to check out Beetlejuice on 4K UHD. I'm not here to talk about how good or bad the movie is, I'm just going to share some thoughts on the audio and video quality. Now let's go over a few tech specs. The movie was shot in 8K. It's got a 4K DI. It's rated PG-13. Runtime is 105 minutes. Aspect ratio is 185:1, and the audio is in Dolby Atmos. Before we take a look at the audio and see how active this mix is, if you don't know what the Atmos viewer is, you can find a link down below in this video's description that tells you all about it, what it does, and where to get it. You can also find a list of all the gear that I use for these 4K reviews down there as well. So I saw this recently at the Dolby Cinema when it first came out at the theater, and I wasn't exactly impressed with the audio mix. Surprisingly, watching this at home, this movie has one of the most active surround mixes that I've heard this year. I noticed that whether if you've got 4 top channels or 6 top channels, that this could scale nicely between either setup. The rain effects, which there are a few of them, blanket the top and lower surrounds to provide you with an enveloping, immersive feel. The musical score and all of the musical numbers will also fill in all the available channels to give you that extended soundstage. There's also a few moments with really good dynamic channel panning. At 15:33, you'll hear the car move from the front speakers towards the back speakers with a bunch of leaves blowing in the overhead channels. At 51:25 and 53:07, there's a swirling effect that spirals through all of the speakers, which makes it feel like you're traveling through a wormhole. This part also has one of the more impressively deep bass moments in the movie. The sandworm scene also has some pretty good bass response, but as a whole, I felt that the bass response was excellent in parts, but mostly just on the okay side. Overall, it does have a very spacious soundstage that should extend well beyond your speakers, which I felt was very open. There's this part at 1 hour, 7 minutes in where Beetlejuice is drawing a circle in the back left speaker, which caught me off guard because it felt like it was coming right over my shoulder. So it's got some really nice subtlety sprinkled into the mix, and of course, dialogue always remained easy to hear. And I'd like to say thank you to Kaleidoscape for providing me with this copy of Beetlejuice so I can bring you, the home theater movie loving community, this 4K review. Now, if you want to get your movies weeks and sometimes months before they come out on 4K Blu-ray in the same quality, if not better quality, consider getting a Kaleidoscape for your movie watching needs. Links can be found down below in this video's description. As for video quality, this movie was shot digitally, whereas the first movie was shot on film, so it isn't as grainy as the original movie, although it would appear that they may have added in some film emulation, which will add a slight bit of artificial grain to the image. And despite being shot with a Sony 8K digital cinema camera, will keep the image from having that 4K digital crispiness that I know a lot of you guys love. I found it just enough to keep the digital edge out of the picture while still giving it a somewhat film-like feel. You can still tell it was shot digital with how clean the detail is, especially with all the fantastical set pieces. Whereas in the original movie, everything is grittier looking and just a little bit darker. There's still a ton of very fine details, so all you wrinkle counters out there can see all that glorious detail in all of those close-up shots. And the digital effects, they were equally as clean, but also noticeably digital, so they didn't always blend in well with the practical effects. As for the HDR, I thought this added a lot to the color palette, giving it a nicely saturated picture with great splashes of color. It's got a lot of multicolored background lighting, so there are sometimes greens, blues, or purples that have a really nice contrast with the darker elements on screen. Some of those really dark spots do lack shadow detail, but I'm sure that this is probably just by design, while the peak highlights had plenty of detail without anything being overblown. I found this to be a great looking transfer and a must own for Beetlejuice fans and for folks who want to show off their 4K displays. I'm gonna go with a 9.5 for video. For audio, this was way better than I was expecting. It's got a great immersive mix that's both spacious and detailed with bass that hits pretty good. I wish it could hit a little bit harder during the musical bits, but as a whole, it is a fun Atmos mix and I think worthy of a 9.5. Now this review was based on the Kaleidoscape version, which comes in at 60.1 gigs in Dolby Vision and 60.8 gigs for the HDR10 version, which is the version that I saw. If you're holding out on grabbing this on 4K Blu-ray, that comes out on November 19th, which is a little over a month from the time that I'm shooting this video, or you can just grab it on the Kaleidoscape. So what are your thoughts on Beetlejuice? Have you seen it, and how do you think it stacks up to the first movie? Leave a comment and let me know. Now, if you do want to pick up this movie, I will leave some links for it down below in this video's description. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you want, you can follow us on social media. And if you want to support the channel, get exclusive content or great discounts on audio and video gear, then stop by our Patreon page. Be sure to like this video if you found it useful and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you again in the next one.